Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Nomad World weekly series. I'm Becky, and once again, I will be your host. Today, we're going to be talking with my guest, Geleen Antonio, about protecting your mental health as a digital nomad. Geleen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you.
We're excited to hear more about this really important topic that I think people don't think enough about. They often, I don't know if you'd agree, Jolene, people think, I'm on the road now. I have complete
Mhm.
location freedom. Life's going to be great. But then we find out that's not always the case. You bring yourself with you.
Wherever you go. Yeah, that's the quote, right? And it's only maybe a few months in to traveling around the world, packing your bags every single week and then moving. And then it's only once all of that stress and adrenaline comes down that you're like, oh, that feeling is still there. And the seeing Machu Picchu in person didn't change that. So yeah, that's the point where I'm like, okay, there's resources to help you. I'm here. Let's get you connected. Let's get you feeling supported.
Absolutely. So, first, Jolene, could you share with us your background and how you got involved with this topic and this issue for digital nomads?
Yeah, so I'm originally from the US, and my background actually started. I've always been in like the healthcare arena. So studied neuroscience in university and worked in healthcare consulting, more on the operations side, vetting physician contracts, and also in the lab and biotech space. So very much more in that like operations automation type of arena and but within healthcare. And then around 2020, when we all were able to start remote work because of COVID, or, like life was kind of pivoting us in various ways due to the pandemic, I realized I wanted to start working remotely. And well, for me, I had like this business idea that was about ghost tours and cookbooks. So that's actually why I started nomading, but pivoted that idea because one of the first two places that I uh, started nomading and was in the US. And the US is so hard to be a nomad in. It's hard to find connections. You don't really have the same, if you've gone to a digital nomad hub and you've met so many people and there's so many meetups and so many like-minded travelers. I find that that was rare in the US, especially in the larger cities. Like maybe you'll find some people, but they're more established, they're grounded, they're not necessarily willing to invest in a 1 month connection. So I felt um that it was like really isolating doing like my first 6 months of nomading in the US, and I realized I was missing that connection. I was still stressed out working my consulting job, and that didn't change even though I moved my laptop to New Orleans. I'm like, no, I'm still stressed out. That's still burning out. And now I'm burning out while there's no one around me and there's no routine, and having to do this all on my own. So the first few years of nomading was really rough. It really made me confront a lot of the things that I had created in my life that no longer were serving me, but I was still too afraid to let go of. And having to find my own resources throughout this whole process of letting go was really scary. I had to find my own therapists that were willing to see me outside of my state. That was a trial and error in itself. Trying to find coaches that were also going to understand the unique challenges of not having a base, and, me letting go of all of the quote unquote successful aspects of my life to chase something with more meaning, to trying to find a group of people that would also connect with where I was at that moment. And I went through a lot of trial and error, as I mentioned, doing that. And then as I started to travel outside of the US, I started meeting other like-minded travelers who were feeling very similarly. Like we're like, yes, we're these COVID nomads and we get to travel and work remotely. And after a few months, a year of doing that, we all kind of collectively felt like, okay, like it didn't solve everything I thought it would. So now what? And because I had done a lot of that own internal work myself, I found myself providing these resources to other people. I would be talking, and I'm very open and vulnerable, talking about my journey and relying on therapists and coaches, et cetera, and all the things I've tried. And people are naturally wanting to ask me questions about that. And so I found myself creating guides for people who were wondering, like, how do I find a therapist or what should I look for? I didn't realize that even that basic criteria wasn't common knowledge of, making sure you met multiple therapists and understanding what you need and what modalities might be helpful for what issues you're experiencing. So I started off my company, Travel Not to Escape, because I realized, oh, wow, that was what I was doing initially. But what's another way? What's another way that we can use travel as a way to help us grow personally and live lives that we're actually excited to live, rather than using it as a distraction, um, and just moving to the next city and hoping that it goes away. So it's been an evolution since I started. I started the podcast a couple of years ago, and it was mostly focused on solo female travelers, because that's myself and where I found myself. And it's evolved. I've opened it up to all types of travelers, regardless of your travel style, regardless male, female, whatever gender you identify with, whatever age you identify with. Mental health is really important for all of us. The most common theme being if you're on the road and you're needing support, where can you get that? And let me help you with either the directory of providers that can help you, or with media resources so you feel seen and heard, or the support group so you feel connected. So that's really how all of that came together.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a very organic journey, but of course, a very
Hmm.
necessary one. And I can tell you personally, being American also, I don't even understand the rules that are, in place for therapists, but
Hmm.
I found it so challenging that I was traveling on the road and with Zoom being so prevalent now,
Hmm.
for example, that a therapist based in the US, if I was not from that state that she was
State.
licensed in,
Yeah.
she was not allowed to meet me online, and I just didn't understand
Hmm.
it. I said, why is this not keeping up with the real needs of people around the world now? But do you know the ruling on that? Is it just like,
Still
if
the
you're not
same.
from that state, it's still the same. So
It's
it's
still the same. Yeah. So there were some regulations that were a little bit more lenient during COVID times that have since reverted back. But essentially, if you are licensed in a state, even if your patient goes on vacation, you can't really see them while they're on vacation. It's that strict. That person has to be still within the state limits. But there's more flexibility actually if the therapist is the one traveling, but the patient has to be the one staying, which doesn't make sense if you're the one traveling and going through a lot. You're traveling because maybe you are searching for more. Maybe you are healing from something, and that's the time when your normal support system is no longer able to provide services to you. I think that was always something that frustrated me about the process. There are certain aspects where there's like side packs. So if your therapist is enrolled in that, then they can provide care across different states, but that still doesn't cover countries. And it's really a very dated system that I'm hoping to find some workarounds for so that we can service the traveler population and provide these resources.
what workarounds have you found? So you've mentioned that you have a directory
Hmm.
that people can go to. Does this directory include people you can have online, let's say
Hmm.
one-on-one consultations with?
Yes. So this has been a labor of love, because the other part of this, and this ties to my background as well, is I want to make sure that the those that are on this directory are licensed and experienced and, you know, uh, credentialed to be able to provide the care that they say that they can. And I think in the online space, that's like a big worry is, are they legitimate in providing this care? The last thing I want is someone to be able to connect with someone on this directory and actually have such a bad experience that they're deterred from therapy altogether, which has happened with other people that I know. So I want to prevent that from happening. So I have been vetting each one, and in that process realizing what each individual therapist's workaround is for providing services to this population. So if you are a US based therapist, one of the ways that a lot of therapists are able to provide services to travelers is by switching some of their sessions into coaching. So it can't be labeled as therapy. It can't be labeled in any of the traditional sense, and it has to be very specific type of modalities, like hypnotherapy, for example. Hypnotherapy isn't under the normal licensing regulations, so that could be provided. Or if you do a more general coaching, yes, they might be still pulling from all their knowledge base. So you're still getting the expertise. The labeling is just slightly different. And maybe you can't do EMDR type of therapy, right? So if you're needing that type of modality, there's actually experts from different countries that have less licensing restrictions, are still credentialed and have the education to be able to provide these services, but aren't as limited. So depending on what your specific need is, perhaps you match, a coaching session from a US based therapist to do the talk therapy. But if you're needing something more specialized, like that needs licensing, then you outsource or refer that to a different provider that can legally provide those services. So it's a puzzle piece at the moment. But the goal is to at least have these available so that the people that need it can access it.
How many people roughly would you say are currently in the directory?
Yeah, so I have around 100 who were interested in the initial outset. I've been personally vetting each one, so having 30-minute conversations with each provider, reviewing their credentials, and then also I've also been interviewing a lot of them on the podcast so that not only will they have their own listing, but you get a sense of how they speak, what their background is, why they went into this particular career to help serve who they help serve, and what a taste of what their session could look like. So that's why I said this is a labor of love. So I'm going through, I think I've gone through like 40 so far. The directory itself, I'm launching the user version in April so that you'll be able to go in and actually find therapists based off of different filters. But at the moment, I've spent the last few months advertising and vetting on the therapist side.
Really love that. And thank you so much for doing something that is so necessary and needed across the digital nomad community as well. Are you targeting digital nomads? So are these therapists that you're speaking with, like, do they understand kind of this the
Mhm.
background or the needs that a digital nomad might have?
Exactly. That's part of the conversation that I have with each one of them. I want to make sure that they didn't just, therapists love directories. I want to make sure that they didn't just enter their information into the directory as a marketing piece, like that they actually can have these conversations, that they have had patients where they've dealt with these issues in the past. That's actually why the podcast episodes with them are really important as well, because we dive into some of these challenges, so that we understand in what capacity also that they've been able to provide these services. So yeah, very, very much a big part of it is making sure that they do work with our population of travelers.
That's great. In your research, what are some of the issues that you've seen digital nomads facing with their mental health? I imagine loneliness has to be one of the big
Yeah.
ones.
Loneliness, anxiety, depression, and a lot of times also grief. And grief in a lot of different forms. PTSD comes up a lot as well, PTSD and grief. And that is because, as I mentioned, you take you wherever you go. And so if there are things that you had not processed prior to leaving, like I feel like a lot of us who travel, there's that urge for big change in our life. Maybe that seeking freedom from whatever chains had bound us in that previous life. But we actually have to take a look at what about our previous life felt restricting. And when we dive into that, maybe there were some underlying issues in our families and childhood and our support systems back home that's then influenced how we feel now. And only when you are in a different environment and having to process this on your own do those feelings come up. And so that's a lot of it is understanding the PTSD from what your lived experience was and having to process that, and how what symptoms come from that, whether it's the anxiety or the depression, or grief. So a lot of people have lost loved ones, and they travel on their memory, right? Like I've actually interviewed a few travelers who had lost a parent, and their big push to travel and give up everything in their life was to, oh, I'm gonna cry, was to live the life that their parents never got to actually live. And so, as they're processing and living out this this life for them. They're doing it on their own. Um, so sad. A few of them came up to my mind. Um, so so grief is a big one. Heartbreak also. A lot of people end relationships, or even burnout. A lot of people are burnt out, and that's why they do this. And there's like a big loss in your identity, and the shift in that identity can also cause crises that are unsupported while you're traveling. And then there's also underlying mental health, like larger mental health issues that people deal with as well. That might require more like psychotherapy or medication support. So there's a whole host of them, but that's just the top that I've seen, especially from my interviews.
Yeah, it could be the tip of the iceberg. It's interesting that you mentioned losing a loved one because I've interviewed some
Hmm.
people on this podcast that they started traveling because a friend, even a friend or someone they
Hmm.
knew passed away too soon, and they don't want to miss out on travels that they might have taken as well. But you can get
Hmm.
on the road having that be an impetus, but then you're out there and you didn't quite maybe think about everything that may comes with it, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and having to process the grief of losing that loved one while also living in their memory. And it's just a those episodes are always so heart-wrenching when you get down into it, which is why like I recalled a few memories from some of those episodes. And we're like, oh man, like, and you're doing this by yourself. Uh,
So I think I felt this before myself. I've questioned, am I doing certain things because of it? Is you're traveling sometimes so fast that it's like you're
mhm.
running from something or you're not allowing yourself to sit and really think about some of the issues that you might be dealing with.
Yeah, and I think that travel is beautiful. I think when we get that question of are you traveling to escape, it's always asked in a very negative way. And I wanted to reframe that, which is why I put I'm travel not to escape, right? It's like, no, I'm traveling not to escape. Let's do this intentionally. Maybe that was the way I started, but through this process, I'm learning that no, I'm going to travel to connect. I'm going to travel to transform or to play again, and to seize my life. So there's so many beautiful aspects that you can travel to do once we reflect and are aware of what are we actually doing right now and for what.
We haven't touched on this, but I know a lot of us are single that are traveling as digital nomads,
Hmm.
and I'm sure we would love to find a partner. A lot of us want to find
Hmm.
another digital nomad partner.
Yes, that's the what is that called? Like the golden snitch, if you're like a Harry Potter fan.
I haven't heard it referred to as that before, but yes, I think that would be the ideal for a lot of nomads. But I think what you're talking about is so important to do before you open yourself up to finding that other partner, or it's going to help you immensely. And maybe it's a thing a lot of people aren't thinking about as they're out there trying to meet others. It's a challenge, I know, for us digital nomads to connect and find romantic
Yes. Yeah,
connection.
I actually hosted a workshop or a mental health support meetup. I call them support meetups because yes, it's part workshop, but really the beauty in it is the us talking in connection online about these topics. So I choose a topic that resonates each month. Last month, because it was February, we focused on dating and traveling, actually. And one of the mental health experts that I partnered with for this one, Raquel, she's also a digital nomad. And her and her partner are traveling via sailboat, which is a whole different style of nomading. They've been doing that for years. And so I interviewed her and we talk about the challenges and the rewards of traveling with a partner while on a sailboat. And in that support meetup, we talked about this in community. I recently interviewed another, she's a coach, and but she has like a neuropsychology background, and she focuses on the challenges and rewards of intercultural relationships. So even when you're in one, having to work through some of those cultural differences also brings up issues where you might need some conversations and support around as well. So there's so much regarding the travel and dating space that we could get into too.
Another podcast. It's a whole other
Yes, yes,
podcast.
exactly.
So you've mentioned these meetups, these workshops that you have. Can you
Hmm.
tell us more about that? How often you're having them and how they work? Is it all on Zoom and with a group of people?
Yeah, so all on Zoom, or Google Meets, whichever platform we end up using that month. And it's really they've been started because I saw on some forums, and I do this with a lot of what I'm working on is I'll see the Facebook groups and the WhatsApp groups, and I start to look at what are the most commonly posted things. And a lot of it is loneliness and people wanting to connect. And someone had posted, does anyone do mental health support groups? And I was like, no, but I have the resources to do it. And that's how it really started. And so it started at the end of last year, actually. So it's fairly recent. And I started with, let's kick off and I'm going to host this. And then one of the therapists that were already in my community said, hey, can I co-host it with you? I was like, yes, beautiful. I love that. And so that's how we kicked it off. And then after the first one, another therapist was like, hey, I'd love to co-host the next one with you. And then after that, a group of people that joined, they had mentioned, hey, can you do one on ADHD and travel? That would be amazing. So now I'm interviewing ADHD coaches and trying to find a right fit for co-hosting that next workshop for us. So it's been really fun and organic in building this piece. My next step, actually, which I'm really excited about, I just had this idea a few days ago, but I think we're going to move fast and iterate from there. And I've already claimed all the websites for it, but I'm going to host a travel mental health summit and basically uh, expand upon this mental health support meetup, but with all these different topics. I'm going to have different tracks. Maybe one's going to be about dating, and I'll bring on different dating coaches and therapists that focus on the intercultural, how to work through attachment styles while dating and while traveling, and have like maybe, a few under each tier. Connection, how to make meaningful connections with just maybe friends, or how to maintain connections. And then also maybe a track on building a sustainable business for your mental health. So there's a lot of areas that we can do this at, but I'm putting it all under a travel mental health summit and gathering all these experts that I've already met through the podcast, that already met through the directory and a lot of my speaking engagements, and putting them together to provide these resources to travelers for free.
Wow, do it. Oh, that's amazing. I think
Yes.
we really need this in the community. Because you hear some people even joke to each other sometimes, like, oh, there's something wrong with digital nomads. We're all like, we have our issues. That's why we're out here traveling. But, some of that might be true, but it's time to look deeper in. Maybe we can start to
hmm
get support that like we've already said, we never got at home, or we never had the
hmm
time to stop and really think about what are the issues that I'm dealing with? Because we all have issues that,
hmm
haven't been fully dealt with. And I think we just need to take the time to do it. So,
Yeah, and things that come up that we wouldn't even realize we would need help with. So for example, I just met yesterday and we're going to talk as well about the summit. But she specifically works with people who have gone through injuries or accidents and the aftermath, the mental health aftermath of that. And it's so funny because I had actually had a few friends who, injured an ACL or had a skiing accident, and they're also nomadic, but because of that injury, they had to stay put. And during that moment, they, were fighting for normalcy, fighting for like their lives back. And it's a very dark time for them for however long that healing period is. And that's great that there's a counselor that specifically helps them during that moment where they feel at a low physically. So yeah, like things that I didn't even think about myself would be needed. Those are the types of support systems that I'm trying to gather for people.
this is just invaluable, and that summit will be such a great thing to
Yes.
attend for so many people. So, do you have any idea, like timing already, of when you might want to do this?
Yeah, yeah. So in a month, so we're gonna try to move fast. So the
Well,
mental health month for the U.S. is in May. So I would love to kick something off to kick off Mental Health Awareness Month in the U.S. And then International Mental Health Awareness Month is October, I believe. So definitely going to do something for. We're gonna repeat this over and over again because I think that there's so many topics, so many experts and travelers working through various aspects of their lives at different stages. So I think it's going to be a beautiful thing to repeat, but we're going to try to kick off the first one in May.
That's exciting. Yeah, build fast and then grow out from there. So
Yeah,
fantastic.
exactly. So right now the website isn't it's claimed, but it's not, yeah, it's built, but it'll be travelmentalhealth.com. But my normal website is travel not to escape. So everything will be linked together beautifully once that gets launched.
Wonderful. Okay, the last thing I wanted to ask you about was about places, because as nomads,
Hmm.
we have this superpower of being able to travel anywhere we want, keep working. Is there a place in the world that you felt you really connected with and made you feel more at peace than other places? Do you think there are certain places out there that you would recommend to people if they're looking for a better spot to feel mentally? For example, just to give you some, so I've been in Lisbon now for the last month and it has been raining here every day. And I know, there's many places out there in the winter that it's just a constant gray sky. It's and people really start to struggle. And I wonder if
Hmm.
you had places that you would recommend to people to feel better mentally, or if that you think is a thing.
I think it is, but it also is individually going to be influenced. So personally, the place that I've spent the longest in, Buenos Aires is one of them. I spent 9 months there. Actually went back because it was amazing. The best part of Buenos Aires for me at that point was there was a lot of community. And when I went, it was January until July, so it was still fairly hot, actually. Cooled down through fall, but in terms of weather, it was actually quite nice. And just the connection, the community, the culture, I felt really good and balanced there, where I could do work, but also connect with people and still explore the city and get out into nature. So there were a lot of components that worked well together. I was in Ubud in Bali, and I liked that for focusing on health. For me, it was a great place. I spent 4 months there, and I went to the gym every day, and I ate really healthy food. And I actually got on a really good healthy track because you are who you surround yourself around, and so you think about who gets attracted to these same places, and really just soaking up that energy of that particular community as well. Chiang Mai, I went to. It's a huge digital nomad hub, and I went for a conference. But because there was a conference going on, there was just so many entrepreneurs that were hungry and willing to give and learn, and that really helped me in my business building as well. So I think the first question I would ask is like, what are your intentions for that quarter or whatever period of your life that you're in, and what are you actively wanting? Because I feel like balance isn't necessarily having all the things, all the balls juggled at once. It's really prioritizing maybe one or two of those things and going not all in, but like really finding a place that is more conducive to whatever those priorities are. So maybe the sun is not going to be out 24/7 in that particular location. But for that period of time in your life, your focus is on going to the gym every day, and that's going to be indoors anyway, and maybe getting some business building done. Then that place might actually be really good for you.
Yeah, time as well. Like if you know that
Hmm.
the sun and this particular place is not known for that at a certain time of the year, plan accordingly. Don't forget about the weather and its effect it can have
Yeah.
on mental health. But also, like you said,
Hmm.
find something to focus on if you are in a place where it's not working out weather-wise, or yeah, turn it into a
Yeah. I'm also quite spiritual. I think through this process, I've gotten a bit of. I still had that science foundation. And I still very much think that that's valuable, but I'm also very open to other ways for us to grow personally. And astrocartography is actually one of the things that I've started to utilize for my own travels, where I have an astrologer that I met in Mexico, and she has blown my mind on some of the readings that were very ultra specific. But she has pointed out certain areas of the world that might be more conducive to certain goals of mine. So, for example, I'm in Vietnam, and this is apparently where my sun line is. So, this is where I have a lot more attention to the work that I'm doing, and I'm out there. I'm in the spotlight, which actually is interesting because all of my speaking engagements started, and all of the connections and investors that I've met and mentors, it's all started in Vietnam. And so there's certain areas like when I was in Buenos Aires that was more conducive apparently to like my Venus line, which is love and connection and beauty and culture. And I'm like, yeah, makes a lot of sense. So every there's lines that are very different for each person. So a place that might feel like amazing for the majority of people might make you feel not so great depending on what line it is and vice versa as well.
I am very intrigued by that feeling when you get to a place. It feels like you've been there before, or you just
Yeah.
resonate with it immediately. But then other places, despite the weather, you're like, no, I just don't like it, but other people love it. And so
Hmm.
it's interesting as to where it all comes from. But yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It's always
gotta
something fun to look into too.
yeah, trial and error sometimes. Well, Jillian, thank you so much for sharing all of the things you've shared, all the different ventures that you're working on to help us have better mental health out there. Is there anything else you would like to share with us before you go, including where people can follow you?
I think let's normalize this conversation. I think we are all traveling on our own a lot of the times, or maybe with partners or groups, but a lot of us are doing this journey by ourselves, but we don't necessarily need to feel alone, especially in the issues that we're working through. So that's one of my biggest goals is if you're feeling some type of way, there's someone else feeling that some same type of way as well. And so let's not work through it in isolation. Let's find community. Let's find connection and support because you can get through so many hard things. So yeah, I just want to leave off with that. And everything is going to be on travelnottoescape.com, or you can just head over to our Instagram at travel not to escape. That's going to be the easiest for finding updates to the summit, the any of the meetups, and the media platform as well.
Thank you again, Jillian. I hope you have a wonderful day and good luck with all of your ventures. And I look forward to meeting you
Yes.
in person one day.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.